Alright, Sonoma. It is the Touring Classics. We have the Nissan Skyline GTR R32. It is definitely my favorite of the bunch. It is a very, very fun car to drive. Car setup wise, we have lowered the rebounds one click each, and I've lowered the rear ride height to give it some more stability. Other than that, everything is at default. We got a pretty good qualifying, as you can see. However, when I was following Gruber around, he was able to hold me off. So I have a feeling this is actually going to be a tougher race than it seems like it is going to be. Mainly because the Nissan's tires tend to go off pretty quick, and this is set to a 30-minute race. So we'll see what I can do. I'm also really terrible at starts in this thing, but we'll see what we can do. I told you I was terrible at starts in this. Luckily, it looks like Gruber got a terrible start also. Let's be a little bit careful up here the first time when everything's cold. The car wants to slide even more than usual when everything is really cold. So you have to play it a little bit careful. As you'll see when we come around this corner, we have it on the sunrise lighting. So it's some really cool colors in the sky for these eastward facing sections. Now again, I am actually pulling a gap. I expect to pull a gap early, but this car, as I said, this car chews through its tires, so I really have to pull a gap early. Because once my tires get below about 98, it's gonna become very, very difficult to control this thing. Whereas the BMW and the Volvo, both BMWs, tend to use their tires much less maliciously. So we gotta try and get as far ahead as we can now. Really use that pace. And unfortunately, under braking, I also have to brake a little bit earlier than the other cars do. That lap, it seemed to be pretty constant around a second. What you'll notice is, through these fast, straight sections, the Skyline will have a huge advantage. And then through the corners, the other cars will tend to pick up that advantage and pull time back. The only exception would be quick, high-speed corners, like the upcoming one. Not this corner, but the next sequence. So this right-hander here, the Skyline can gain time on, and then this left-hander here, if you take it correctly, you can gain time over the others here also, especially on the exit down here. Just floor it as soon as you see that curve. Let the back end drift out a little bit. You can gain a big advantage down here. And again, this whole sequence here, Skyline really loses time on, which is one of the reasons that you really want to be ahead. Because if you're behind somebody there, that's a prime overtaking opportunity. But unfortunately with the Skyline, the way it gets through those corners is not ideal. Got a little bit of the grass there. But even through this section, you can see my advantage pretty much remains constant or shrinks through that whole section. A little bit more brave on the brakes, but we still lost a little bit of time right there. Luckily we can gain it right back here on the straightaway. Realistically, I want to be gaining probably around a second a lap. The disadvantage on old tires is that huge. And it may not seem like it the first time you drive this car. And realistically, if you keep your races under about 15 minutes or under, you won't really notice it at all in this car. Unless, of course, you go with exaggerated tire wear. But if you go for a longer race, this car will definitely show its demons, so to speak. Although, if you just turn tire wear off, then most of the disadvantage of this car goes right out the window, and it becomes just a true monster. It is really amazing to drive a four-wheel drive car in Raceroom, though. I mean, it just feels unreal. You can place it wherever you want. You can save it from almost anything. It's just such a ridiculously stable platform. Now we're already at 99 on the fronts. That is not ideal. We've only knocked 5 minutes off. So I might dial it back a little bit. But at the same time, you run one of two risks. You either run through your tires and then just sort of dial it back automatically as the tires come back away from you, or you dial it back ahead of time and try to keep a more constant pace. There's an example of being able to save it from almost anything. Most other cars, that would have been a big old spin. But in this four-wheel drive Skyline, you just throw your foot back into it, counter steer, and it will come back around 9 times out of 10. As long as you keep it on, it's RMAC. Which realistically, it almost makes this sound like a beginner-friendly car. But I would definitely say with the default setup, it's a little bit too loose for most people to be able to handle right away. But if you lower the rear a little bit, it definitely brings it back to a more friendly platform, so to speak. But even so, there are a lot of steering adjustments you have to make almost constantly to get this thing to cooperate through the corners. Which makes it a very lively, entertaining, and busy sequence of events when you are driving this monster. But it also makes it very rewarding and very fun. Actually tapped the inside wall a little bit there. Reset fastest lap, that's good. Alright, now the rears are down to 99, which means the fronts, by the time we're at 20 minutes, the fronts will probably be at 98, which is when we are likely to start losing pace. Now again, 4.5 seconds seems like a lot of time, but realistically I might even have to take a pit stop late, because we are only about a third of the way through. But we'll see. The last times when I checked the tire wear late, it was in qualifying sessions where I was trying to go all out, so it might be easier to dial it back a little bit once the tires come in. Just race it on that limit that the tires give you, as opposed to trying to push it and just taking tires in a pit stop. We'll see, we're still at 99, we're still good. And even at 98, obviously, it's not going to be the end of the world. If we get down to 96, we just pretty much won't have a choice. We'll have to pit. But I don't know that we will get down that far. We'll see. Still have a nice big gap for now. That pace while we have it. Still setting fastest laps, so we're still going good. That was a big mistake, unfortunately. Car just understeered tremendously. Just erased about 3 of our laps worth of advantage. The unfortunate part is this is right when I'm going to start needing that advantage. Because Because as the fronts wear, it's going to want to understeer more and more around a lot of these crucial corners. And a lot of the advantage this car has is on exit, but if you can't use that advantage because the car is just going to push, then it suddenly becomes a lot harder to maintain that same speed that you were doing earlier. We'll see, it looks like we're still able to gap the field for now. And I'm not pushing as much on the tires as I was in qualifying. Might be able to make them last until about 15 minutes. The big thing is as long as Gruber stays behind Hanula. Because in qualifying, Gruber was only 3/10 behind me. And once my tires got below 98, once they hit 97, he was able to just pull away from me everywhere around the circuit. But as long as he's behind Hanula, I might have a shot. Seems like at this track in particular, the AI has a really tough time passing. I noticed in qualifying there were a couple quicker cars. They kept getting stuck behind other cars, and there were like 3 or 4 car chains most of the way around the track, which looked very awkward and quite funny. But it also belied some of the pace that some of the other cars had. But at the same time, because they also started behind, we run into the same issue in the race where they don't seem to have the ability to pass at a couple of the key spots here. And I think one of those reasons is that it's just the way the AI is set now, with its aggression pretty low. It just doesn't seem willing to pop out in a couple of key places around this particular circuit where you really have to. Because here, you have to be pretty aggressive on the inside to get a pass done here, and be willing to run somebody all the way to the outside of the track. And similarly here, you have to be really aggressive on your dive inside to make any passes work through the S's. So I think at this particular circuit, the AI could deal with a dab of aggression put back in. The big thing is just making sure they don't go back to completely ignoring the fact that you were there. But there are a couple spots where they just need a little bit more willingness to get alongside you and toss their car into a corner to really make it just that little bit more exciting. Now the tires don't seem to be wearing as much. Oh, that's not good. That's going to take a lot out of the tires. Luckily with the damage model, that didn't do much at all. Although realistically, that probably should have ended my race with lots of suspension damage. We were able to freely continue. Although again, we lost lots of our advantage from that. And both of our fronts are at 98 now, so this is when our pace should start slowing down a little bit. See. I'll have to try and use the rear end of the car to turn it a little bit more in a lot of places. Unfortunately, right as my tires are getting to this point, it's right when I'm giving up lots of time with mistakes. So, see how it all shakes out. I really wanted about a 6-second advantage by this point. So we're almost halfway through. Well, I am still able to gap them so far. And again, being in front is a huge advantage at Sonoma, because the AI just doesn't quite take the chances it really needs to. But if you make mistakes, it's easy for it to take advantage of those mistakes. Looks like it's getting a little spread out towards the back of the field. My guess is a lot of those are probably the AI Skylines they're running into tire issues. Oh, front left is at 97 now. So we will definitely start being down on pace that we can carry through corners. And And it's definitely not one of those artificial things, like I'm not slowing myself down on purpose by any means. The car just gets slippery, more slippery the further you go. And the rear end just wants to push, or the front end wants to push more and more. Well, it looks like I am still able to keep my advantage for now. I really do like the circuit quite a bit though. It's just it's almost an endlessly flowing circuit from one end to the other. Basically the only thing that, the only thing that interrupts that is the hairpin at the end. And it sort of serves as a nice marker to start and finish your lap on. That was a big mistake. Luckily I was able to slow down enough to not get the cut penalty, which is good. I do have those penalties set to a drive-through, so that would really unhinge my race in a hurry. Because on a drive-through, you cannot take any fuel, you cannot take any tires, you cannot stop in your pit stall at all. You have to just drive all the way through the pits. You cannot make an advantage out of a penalty. So it would be a very tough penalty to take. Our left rear is now at 98. So we're getting closer and closer to that point. And again, those BMWs and those Volvos are just relentless. They will mostly keep almost the same pace through the entire race. So these mistakes may bite me yet. We'll see, I've still got pace in the old girl. Have to be more and more careful on entry and exit. Like that's going to rip a lot out of the rears. That's an interesting place for a track cut. Well, I guess theoretically you could go quite wide there and gain an advantage, so I guess that does make sense to have one there. Oh man. Braking for that last corner, you can see just how much the AI is able to gain on me under braking. And luckily I can pull that right back out on acceleration. Basically this long straightaway really helps. Because if somebody does get around me, I should still be able to make a run of it into turn one. I actually still gained quite a bit on that lap, so maybe the tires on the BMW and Volvo do run out more now. Again, the last time I drove those was before the physics change, and before this car was introduced, so it's possible they also wear their tires a little bit more than they did before. Oh man, that was not where you want understeer. Just did not come back to me at all. Oh, now both fronts are at 97. Oh man. You can just see how much more the car wants to throw itself around. The car is trying to exert its will over me to make sure I keep it in line. It's still such a fun car to drive though, even as it's starting to lose grip. Actually, as it starts to lose grip, it almost becomes more fun. You can really start to use your right foot to rotate the car a lot. It's kind of one of those odd things with the four-wheel drive. You can use your right foot to both rotate and stabilize the car all at the same time, depending on which direction you're steering and how hard you're steering. So if you give it a quick shot of steering and a dab of gas, you can really get the car to rotate. You give it a dab of counter steering and some gas, you can really get it to come back to you. Which makes it a very fun car to drive. looks like I may have actually overestimated the pace of the AIs, which is unfortunate. I mean, they've kept it close, but not the most exciting race when I'm just in first all time. I guess realistically I should have just not qualified, but I might have to do that in the future. The AI is also set to adaptive, so it's possible it just needed another race before it got more accurate. Because I gave it one 8-minute race, and I thought it worked off of qualifying sessions now also. But it either does not, or it doesn't move as much from qualifying sessions as it does from races. So either way, this is not going to be the exciting exciting finish I was hoping for, if my brain can make the words come out in the right order. Yeah, you can see some of the AI cars falling off pretty harshly now. Oh, there's a couple that might even lap before the end of this. We still have a third of the race left. That's kind of surprising, we have that sort of pace. Now the funny thing would be, is if it's some of the Skylines that we come up and lap. And that would sort of reaffirm what I thought about the Skylines. And it would more just be an issue of the adaptive AI not being, quote-unquote, up to snuff yet. Which almost feels like that is what is going on in this situation. It feels more like the adaptive AI set itself a little too easy still. Which is fine. It's still better than the old system, which the old system, realistically, you would run one race. The race would be way too easy. Which the first race was. I just started myself in the back, and within 8 minutes, I worked my way all the way up to the front. Around a track like this where it's really hard to pass. This one you can see I'm not gaining nearly as much time over the AIs as I would have been in the other one, so if I had started in the back, I probably would have finished about 6th or 7th. Although, with a full 30 minutes, I might have also been able to work my way back up to the front eventually. But anyway, the old AI, or the old adaptive system, basically, the first race you did, you kicked the crap out of the AI. The second race you did, the AI kicked the crap out of you. And then every subsequent race, the AI kicked the crap out of you even harder. So it wasn't quite the right system. Now it seems like it's sort of the different setup where you kick the crap out of the AI the first time. The second time, you're still a little faster than they are. And then I'm guessing by the third time, it's probably pretty well knows where it needs to put them. Especially for a 30-minute race like this, it's going to hopefully gather quite a bit of data to know right where the AI needs to be for subsequent races. Because I will likely be doing more races in the very near future with these cars, probably still with the Skyline. It's one of those things where I also need to find tracks that work well for the other cars and aren't super heavy Skyline tracks. Because I raced these online at Mid-Ohio, and that track is just, especially early on in the run, it's way too much of an advantage for the Skyline. Because that entire first sector, more or less, becomes a gigantic freeway where this thing can really flex its turbocharged muscle. And similarly at Bathurst. Bathurst is actually an interesting one in these cars. That might be the next race we run. We'll have to see. Because on the bottom section of the circuit, this car is fantastic. It loves the bottom part of the mountain. But once you get towards the top of the mountain, it really starts to fall apart a little bit. But conversely, the last time I raced this thing at Bathurst, which was online, I did not do anything to the setup. And I think if I set it up similar to here, where I soften the rebound a tiny bit, and then really bring the rear of the car down, I have a feeling it'll do a similar thing where, for the most part, the car becomes very, very smooth to drive. And I think that likely helped counteract a lot of the tire wear and tear. Because my front left is at 96, but it's not pushing like it was the last time. Like the last time I raced this one, I didn't change any of the setup stuff, specifically around Bathurst. By the time my fronts were at 97, I just had incredibly aggressive understeer and incredibly aggressive oversteer, and neither of those were able to cancel each other out. They were both affecting the car at different times. Whereas with this setup, the car seems much more compliant just all the time, even as the tires are wearing. I can still just point it and push the right pedal down and have it do exactly what I want. So we'll have to experiment. Again, at this point, apologies for the AI, but I thought that this would be the race that they kicked my butt. And especially with two of the AI being so close in qualifying, I figured my start would be enough to get a couple of them ahead, and then we would have a nice battle, but I've just been able to pull out the gap the whole time, even amidst my mistakes. My mistakes have basically just erased the gaps I've been able to pull. So our front left is at 95. That is starting to get into the worry zone. Effectively in Raceroom, currently, with the way the tire wear works, once you get below 90%, your tires are literally almost done. Like the entire life of the tire is pretty much gone. You have to change off. So conversely, you can estimate at 95%, you've pretty much run through half of the life of the tire, and you are definitely going to start seeing drop-offs. I mean, for some cars it's a little bit different. Like, for example, with the 2014 Touring cars, you'll see the tire thing go red once all your tires are below 95, just sort of to let you know, hey, your car is not going to be handling as it's supposed to at this point. And similarly, the American National, that GT3 Mustang, it's very similar. Once your fronts get below 95, you pretty much have to bring it in because you just get incredibly uncontrollable understeer from the front to the point where you're probably slowing down about 300% more going into a corner than you normally would have to. So you can either plan for that with your setup ahead of time and just dial a ton of oversteer into it and just deal with that early, or you can just choose to come in and change the tires once that happens. That being said, with a four-wheel drive car here, with this Skyline, I guess it overcomes some of that tire wear issue. So it will wear its tires faster than others. But at the same time, it will not be as affected by that extra wear because it's pushing and pulling from all four locations at once. Well, not necessarily at once, but by different amounts. Well, I mean, actually, yes, at once. That's the point of four-wheel drive, but it's not pulling by the same amounts from each corner at once. I think that's one. Yeah, that'll be one more lap. So again, unfortunately, it was just me tooling around at the front, but you did at least get to see and hear the Skyline, even if there wasn't very much excitement. Oh, see, I did actually lose time that lap, and I didn't have any big mistakes. So maybe it has to get below 95 for the tires to really start affecting the pace enough. Well, I guess it's also possible it was just that small mistake. Yeah, I was capitalizing on. But I do feel like I'm going slower than I was at the start. I mean, I'm definitely going slower than I was at the start, but I'm not setting fastest laps, but like significantly slower, I should say. Because I think at the start I was doing 31s, and now I'm all the way down to like 34s. It is one thing that would be nice is if you could see a lap breakdown after the race, so you could see where your fastest laps were, where your mistakes were, and how you lost pace or gained pace as the tires came into their own, or as the tires wore themselves off. We almost caught that other car, but we didn't quite have the pace for it. If I erased those separate 3.5 and 2.5 second mistakes, I would have caught that other car. We would have at least had a lapped car to have fun with, but alas, 'tis the way of things. Hopefully that was still interesting enough. Again, unfortunately, wasn't the coolest thing in the world, but we win! Yay! Now I do want to see where the other Skylines ended up. I think there were only 2 other ones. Looks like they were not the ones that were falling by the wayside. So there was one other one in 11th. Maybe there was only one other one. And one in 14th. Oh, and 18th and 19th. So they were pretty well spread out. So my assumption at this point would be that the AI runs the tires off of the Volvo and both BMWs at the same pace. So we'll just have to figure out a track where the Skyline doesn't have quite the same advantage, and we'll have to let the adaptive AI catch itself up. So hopefully next time we have a better race. But we have a win! And we didn't win by as much as we should have because I made multiple mistakes. But as always, thank you guys very much for stopping by, and I will see you guys later.